right, welcome to another edition of the Blunt Force Conservative Podcast. I don't know if how many of you had a chance to catch me live on WYAB on Thursday. I was on there from 5 to 7 Eastern. Still feels kind of odd saying 5 to 7 Eastern. I'm here in the Central Time Zone. So right now I am sharing this video through some of my connections via direct message so we get a little more reach. And hopefully that will help us out here as we go through a lot of this. Let me see if there's anybody else. And Martin Mitchell, Stealth Medical, giving a lot of shout out to some people. My good friend Jim Verdi, Kim George, and John Nance. I think they'll, let's see, please share. As you can see, we're a high-end group here at the Blunt Force Conservative Podcast. My brother-in-law is my actual producer. He's the one that put all this stuff together. Give us some feedback. You can shoot me a message on X. You can comment on YouTube. We're also live streaming. He's changed a couple of things up. We've got a framing around the video now and a little bit of a shadow on that. I think it looks pretty clean and crisp. It's definitely a lot better than it was Thursday at WYB. We were using their cameras and their computers to do everything. And while it is a big time radio station, some of that stuff in the background is not quite as high tech as I'm used to. Plus, it's incandescent lights above. Everything looked kind of washed out. I am not one to get out in the sun, so I don't usually carry a tan or something. I am a little more dark complected just because of the dark hair and take after my mom's side of the family where she tans a little easily. My wife, tanaholic. She loves to tan. She is brown haired, brown eyes, beautiful lady. And she tans really easily. Our middle son, Josh, tans really easily. He gets like hickory brown. I have been super, super dark. If I feel so inclined, maybe one day I'll show you a video of me, or not a video, a picture of me from, I think it was 1989. I was in Incirlik, Turkey, and we were on the coast down in Adana at the off of the coast there in Adana, a place called Urmatalik, and it's right there in the Mediterranean. There's a picture of me at age 26, and I was 26, 25 years old, standing in the Mediterranean. And I think I used up all of the melanin in my skin at that time. I got super dark. And it was enough that when I came home for mid-tour in the Air Force, I was based in the Air Force at the time, one of my best friends and I went to the beach and we're walking around Panama City, and I actually had people doing double takes because it looked unusually dark. It was my hair had lightened up a little bit, all my chest hair had turned light. It was that much sun over in Turkey, but I would spend hours and hours and hours in that. I will probably pay for it much later in life. But this has been a jam-packed week. We're just going to kind of do a wrap up. No shout outs today. We may show a video at the end with a parting message to the citizens of Mississippi, citizens around the United States, with some recommendations that I have of where you can go out and actually affect some change. So let's start back with Saturday. So Saturday, I drove over to the Holy Lands of my hometown of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, which is the center of the football universe. And we are just 7 days away from kickoff, where Alabama will be playing the Florida State Seminoles down in Tallahassee. So I'm looking forward to seeing what year two of Kalen DeBoer is going to look like. I've got some good friends that are also Alabama fans, good fellow Christians. And we're really hoping, I'm hearing some good things. I'm hoping that Ty Simpson, the quarterback, is going to be a good game manager. We've had some good game managers in the past. Some of them have actually won us national championships. People thought that A.J. McCarron was a game manager, and they thought that Jones, who was the quarterback of the last national championship team back in 2020, was a good game manager. I'll take a good game manager if it brings us a national championship. I think we're loaded with talent on defense, and I think our offense is going to be surprising. We did have a little hiccup with our starting running back getting hurt, but I think he's going to be back by the time that we take on Georgia in Athens. So let's get back to why I was over in Tuscaloosa. So I've got my best friend and I, Mark. We've been friends. It will be 50 years this September. We met when I was in the sixth grade. He had moved over from Georgia. He and his family had moved into town, and we just hit it off. We had a lot of similar likes, dislikes. Just he was actually an Alabama fan, a big Alabama fan, and even though he was born in Georgia, but we just hit it off. He actually, when we were growing up, his parents split up right before our junior year of high school, and Mark actually lived with us for a year so he could stay in town. And then his dad relocated to Birmingham, and Mark ended up moving in with him and graduated from high school up in Birmingham. And I think he went to the same high school as Courtney Cox from Friends. I think because she's our age. We all graduated in the same year. So that was just a little nugget out there. So Mark and I have been fast friends. Now, one thing I'll say about friends, there are friends and there are friends. And I think everybody should have friends, a group of friends. I have about 4 or 5 people that are in my circle, as I like to call it. And that circle is a group of individuals that no matter what time of day, no matter what the circumstances, you can call them and they will answer. And if you need them somewhere without questions asked, they will show up. Mark and I joke around about it. There's a scene, I'm trying to think of what the name of the movie is. Uh, Maybe my brother-in-law can pop it up on the screen, the name of it here, or pop in and give us the name of it. But it was Jeremy Renner, and I think it wasn't Matt Damon. But anyway, the context is this. If I called Mark at 2 o'clock in the morning and I said, I need you to come over here, we're going to do something that's not going to be very nice to some people that are not very nice, and you can't ask me about it, then we can never talk about it again. Mark's answer would be, okay, whose car are we going to take? That's the kind of friends that you need. You need the ones that are truly going to have your back. And I would highly suggest that you identify who those people are and let them know that they are in your circle. Mark is one of those in my circle. Mark's actually number one in my circle. So, and that's outside of family. Of course, I always trust my dad and my brother, trust my brother-in-law who's producing this show. But Mark is number one in there. Mark has gone on to some great success. We both grew up dirt poor, but we didn't know it. We had, good foundations from our parents of teaching us right and wrong, teaching us to speak well, teaching us to appreciate the country that we live in. And we've embraced that. Mark went through various jobs and then found his passion. And as I tell some of the younger people that I speak with, find something you're passionate about and make that your profession, and then you never have to work a day in your life. So Mark is a builder, and he builds homes, and he's got a couple of other companies that are out there. We don't talk about money. I know pretty much how much Mark is worth. That's a lot. And let's just say he lives in the same vicinity, same neighborhood type as Nick Saban. We'll just say that. So Mark's got money. Well, he has a business partner who probably the richest person I've ever been around. A nice guy. He's 40 years old, just became a dad. And Mark introduced me to him. He thought it's somebody I should meet, and he's become a friend. So this guy, he and Mark's son, who is a social media influencer, some of the younger people out there may follow him. His name's Tyler Hearing, and you can find him out on TikTok and I think Snapchat's where he said he makes most of his money. Tyler's 21. I don't know if he's 22 yet. He's probably worth in excess of $1 million. He's one of those types of social media influencers, but really, really smart, grounded kid. Anyway, Mark, the other friend that he introduced me to, and another guy, they opened up this club called Two Dimes. Now, it used to be years ago, it was a movie theater, at the University of Alabama when right as I was getting out of high school in the early 80s. And you could go in there and watch a movie. You could actually get food, drink beer. It was a fun little place. And then later on, it was bought by a company called Druid City Music Hall. Oh no, it was the Beach Club. It was called the Beach Club. It was that for a number of years, and then Druid City Music Hall, where acts would come in, they could record things, they could do small concerts, and then that shut down. And Tyler saw this place and had an idea that they need a high-end entertainment venue in Tuscaloosa on University Boulevard. I mean, it's within walking distance of the stadium, and it's called Two Dimes. I recommend you go out there and look for it. Just look Two Dimes Tuscaloosa, and they have it is an amazing job. The Town, that's it right there. Go see that movie. You'll see when Jeremy Renner and Ben Affleck are talking to each other, and they're talking about going and basically doing something bad to some bad people. They never talk about the details of it. It's just which car are we going to take? That's how much trust they have in each other. So anyway, getting back to what I was talking about with Two Dimes, I went over there on Saturday for the soft open. It holds about 1,600 people. It has a 40-foot video screen that they're going to actually live stream Alabama football games there. It can be rented out for events, high-end business events. They'll also have concerts. They'll have MMA fights there, different things like that at their schedule. If you go to the Two Dimes, excuse me, website, you'll see some of the acts. Well, Dexter Roberts was there putting on a show at Two Dimes, and Dexter he was on American Idol. I think he placed seventh. Country music singer, really good kid. Turns out he's from my wife's hometown of Fayette, Alabama, and I got to talk to him for a little bit. It was a really good turnout. It was loud though. Man, I'm just too old and it's too loud. But Dexter put on a great show, well attended. There were a couple of famous people there, at least famous in my circle. As we're driving over to the venue, we made a stop. Mark went to buy some cowboy boots to wear there because he was wearing some dress shoes. And I guess he saw me in cowboy boots and figured he wanted to put some on. And when we're heading over there, it's pretty significant when you're heading over to a club and you get a call from the former heavyweight champion of the world, Deontay Wilder. Mark had done some building of his gym outside his home there in Tuscaloosa. And Deontay was calling to talk to Mark about, what some changes and stuff to the door. I thought that was pretty cool. Another guy that was at the event that was there, just standing right a couple feet from me, and that is Nate Oates, the basketball coach of the University of Alabama, was there, and then Eric Anders, who used to play football for the University of Alabama. Now he's an MMA fighter. I think he's had about 18 fights right now, and he's about 50-50 on those. But it was nice to have, people that were there just to really celebrate this club that was opening. And I think they had their first grand opening here this past Friday. And if you go to their site, you can look. They've got several events you can buy tickets to. And hopefully I'll see you there sometime. I will routinely be in town if there's a football game. Typically, I like to watch the football games with my dad and my brother-in-law at the house, just less hectic. But I will not turn down a ticket to the game. I have a good friend of mine over here, Tony Perkins. Tony has some great seats at the University of Alabama. But, when your dad was the coach that followed Bear Bryant, so his dad was Ray Perkins, Tony has some connections over there. So it's interesting the people that God brings into my life. Tony is a devout Christian. He is, of course, a devout Alabama fan, and he's a good conservative, really good, strong conservative. So anyway, Two Dimes was a fantastic test opening with about 500 people there. It was amazing. I was so happy to be around my best friend in the world and watching his success and getting to be a part of it. I'm not a millionaire like he is, but it's nice to be associated with somebody that has your back, and I have his. So let's talk about some other things that went on this week. As I mentioned, I did the radio on Thursday. I got a call the week before from Kim Wade. Now, Kim is a Black conservative radio show host here in Mississippi, and he's been on the air about over 30 years. And he has a show that's widely followed on WYAB. He calls himself Radio Strongman. And Kim and I have become fast friends. He had heard me on one of the other host shows on air and then invited me to come on his show. And the next thing I know, he's asking me to guest host. So I usually don't turn him down unless something is already planned that I can't get out of. I like to go in there and do it. But he gave me enough of a heads up. And I got to go in and co-host. So there was another guy that if I couldn't do it, that Kim had offered up to, and that's Matt Bishop. And Matt has a show on WYAB that airs on Saturdays at 1 o'clock. Matt is a former attorney. Well, he is a current attorney, but he used to be an attorney at the FBI. He used to work in the investigative law unit. And he left when the purge came along, when Donald Trump came in and they just started cleaning house. They just eliminated the position that he had in that unit. They must have combined some things. Nice guy, very conservative. And he's doing really well here. Has a great show on Saturdays. I advise you to check that out. But he co-hosted with me, and we had a couple of great guests on there. The first hour, we had my good friend Chris Piota. Now, Chris and I, we knew of each other in the FBI. We did not know each other in the FBI, but Chris rose to the pretty much one of the highest levels you can reach without being the director or deputy director in the FBI. He was an executive assistant director, and he pushed back on some things inside the FBI. There's people out there that say that the only way to affect change is for you to just walk away from it. And I had a good debate with a really good friend of mine about some of the agents that were executing the J6 arrest warrants, and that they should have recognized that these were ultimately violations of constitutional rights, and they should have just refused and walked away. Well, Chris and I talked about that, the way that the mechanics work. It's not, you're not making those decisions at the street level as an agent. So I'll tell you how that happens. So an agent in another division conducts an investigation, swears out an affidavit before a judge. A judge reviews it for merit, determines if there's probable cause that evidence or that person is going to be found by executing that warrant, whether it's a search or arrest or search and arrest. And then that typically, if it's in another FBI jurisdiction, that warrant is sent down to that division to execute. Now, when it gets down there, the way it's affected is not determined by the agent on the street. So if I am an agent on a squad and I get this arrest warrant and it says go arrest John Smith, and I read the affidavit and it says criminal trespassing, it's reviewed by a judge, and a judge determined that there's a probable cause that a law has been violated, and that this person is, you're directed to take this person into custody. You can't just say we're not going to do that. You can walk away from it. Yes, you can. You can say, I'm not doing it. You can take the repercussions of that. You might lose your job. You may have to quit and walk away. But is that the best way to affect change? I don't think it is. Because at that level, if you walked away from it, somebody else is just going to pop in and affect that warrant. It's not going to slow it down, not even in the least. But if you're there and you're on the inside, you get an opportunity to speak up and voice your concerns and maybe bring some reason to it. What typically happens is when those things come down and executive management says, okay, this squad's going to do it, and it would get assigned to me. If I'm at my tenure in the FBI where I'm getting close to retirement, I might speak up and say, if they wanted us to do this from a SWAT operation, I may tell the executive management, I don't think it's a good idea. I think it's unsafe. Why don't we just contact the person and have them meet us at the courthouse? Or if we're going to arrest them, why don't we just wait until they're away from their home and they're out away from others traveling somewhere? We do what's called a felony traffic stop. We have state troopers stop them, and then we take them into custody. Now, the reason we do that is it's just much safer. An operation, especially when you're going into somebody else's residence to arrest somebody, it's always a dangerous situation. I've done a bunch of those. It's it's much safer in an environment away from that, much safer for you, your fellow officers, for the citizens around, and for the subject. Now, there are some special agents in charge that may make that decision that it's going to be a SWAT operation. And you can voice your concerns about it. You can document your current concerns about it. You can make your complaints through your chain. So there's two avenues if you're going to, let's say, take a whistleblower status, and that is you go through your chain, making your claims, and they'll be addressed. If you can't, for some reason, can't go through your chain, your next option is to go to Congress. And if you go to Congress, the first question they should ask is, did you take it through your chain? And if not, why? You got to be able to articulate that. That's the only two ways to do it. It's not, let's go to the media and just tell everybody. It doesn't work that way. That's not the way the whistleblower statute is put into effect. And as FBI agents, we're trained on this every year. Every year we go through legal training and they talk to us about this. And I've seen people go through the process where they make that claim through their chain, and I've seen people make that claim through Congress. Um, it's it's a tough decision, and what I want to be able to do is convey to the average citizen out there, because I feel like there's a lot of vim and vigor about holding somebody accountable, and it always seems to be the agents out in the field that if they just stood up and said no. And I see some uninformed individuals with malice intent, that that they're out there trying to say that, well, this is just like the Nazis or the Stasi out there just following orders. It's not. It doesn't work that way. And anybody telling you that, they're just wrong or uninformed, or they've got some other motive. So trying to hold street agents accountable for what were the activities of the upper levels of the FBI and DOJ, it's unfair. I don't think it's correct. And I've said, and I don't want this to discount any claims of their rights being violated by some of the J6 defendants. I've had conversations with them in online media. I was in a spaces that was hosted by a couple of people, and myself and a fellow agent. We answered questions from them, and it was tense at first, but then they kind of understood where we were coming from. And I'm still connected with some of those people. And I've told them, listen, I think that the way that a significant number of those people were treated up in Washington, D.C., once they were put into confinement, I do think, I believe that there were some civil rights violations there. And I would gladly go up and help out any way that I can. I would testify on their behalf on the circumstances. Now, what I bring to the table on that is I spent a couple of years supervising and managing the civil rights program down here in Mississippi. So I have a pretty good understanding of what the FBI can and can't do, and can point those things out, and what DOJ and what the government can and cannot do. It's so I don't want anybody to think that I discount anything that happened to the J6 prisoners. I do think a significant a number of them had their rights violated. And I hope that they are able to get some justice out of that. They should. But taking out some GS 10, 11, 12, maybe even a 13 agent down in the field is not the way. It's not going to affect the change that you're looking for. It's not going to get you the satisfaction that something has been done. It may be temporary, but if you really want to affect the change, you got to change the foundation that led to it. And that was done by the most senior executives. I do know that there were people that pushed back in the FBI. Some of the executives pushed back. Chris Piota will tell you about times that he's pushed back on things in the FBI. One of the assistant directors in charge that I was a first office agent with, he pushed back on the search that went down at Mar-a-Lago about why are we doing it this way? I haven't spoken with him about it. I need to reach out to him. He's retired now, and just kind of run it by him. I haven't spoken to him in years, but it is, I would believe more that he pushed back against it than he was trying to condone it. So anyway, that's the J6 stuff. So let's talk about what's in the news right now. First is the Ghislaine Maxwell interview. Now that I haven't listened to all of the interview yet. It's one of those things where I was reluctant to listen because it's frustrating because I know who did the interview. I mean, it's out there that, the Deputy Attorney General of Department of Justice is the one that led the interview. And then I started listening to the first couple of clips, and there's an assistant special agent in charge out of the New York division. I don't know the guy. I heard the name. I've never heard of it. And I ran it by people in my circle. Nobody knows who this is. I don't know why he was in on the interview. Maybe he had something to do with the Ghislaine Maxwell case or the Epstein case early in it. Maybe he's got the most corporate knowledge. But I did listen to some of the interview, and the reason I struggle with listening to things like that is similar to when my wife gets frustrated with me because I don't like to watch movies uh, portraying FBI stuff or investigative stuff because I don't like watching cop movies and cop shows because when I'm watching it, I'm seeing things that are being done. And I'm like, this is just done for theater. This is not the way that you actually can do stuff. Some of this stuff's illegal that they're doing. Excuse me. Um, so it's the same way with looking at interviews. Uh, I've got a long track record of conducting interviews and interrogations, and I've done some at the highest levels. Even spent 5 months over in a Baghdad prison conducting interrogations of battlefield combatants, jihadis, terrorists, relatives of terrorists, of conducting those interviews. I actually had one of those relatives of a terrorist who's a brother of a terror cell leader up in Europe. He actually tried to sneak a shank into the cell. He planned on killing me, my partner, and our interpreter. But for the grace of God stepping in and having a young private from the military discover the shank that he was planning on bringing in the interview booth, we probably would have had a bad day. Well, I think that the prisoner would have had a bad day because I think we would have gone to town on him. Um, but when I listen for things like this, I'm listening for techniques. Now, what I've heard from the first 4 or 5 clips of the Ghislaine Maxwell interview, and you can go to the DOJ website, they're on there. The transcripts and the audio portions are there, and you can listen to them. I thought they did yeoman's work of, kind of covering the information that they had, but it was more of a deposition or what we would call a proffer rather than an interview and an interrogation. And there's a difference in the things that you do. In a proffer, you're basically going to present some evidence that you normally would present in court and give her an opportunity to comment on that, confirm or corroborate it. That's fine. That's something that attorneys do every day. I've helped do them, and there's no disrespect in how the questions are asked or anything like that. But it is significantly different when you're conducting an investigative interview and an interrogation. And an interrogation is an interview with a purpose. You're eliciting evidence. You're trying to put the person in a position where they tell you things that they may feel uncomfortable about telling you, they don't want to tell you, or in such a way that they confirm or corroborate or contradict some things that you already know. And it is a technique, and it's something that you can't just watch on TV, and you can't just do it once and go in and be successful at it. It takes a while to build your expertise in that. I'm a much better interviewer and interrogator. I was a much better interviewer and interrogator toward the end of my career than I ever was at the beginning of my career. I've been to some of the highest levels of training and courses on that, and I've put those into effect, and I've kind of come up with my own style of the way that I do things, and I've been really successful at it. I was talking to Matt Bishop, who was co-hosting with me on Thursday, and it's not hyperbole, and I'm not saying this uh, just trying to brag about anything. But in 25 years as a federal agent, 5 of it as an Air Force Office of Special Investigations agent, and over 20 of it with the FBI. From my recollection, I think I may have had 3 people that I interviewed invoke their rights. The rest of them talked. And two of those were in the military. Because in the military and OSI, they had us put a form out in front of the person. Kind of makes it feel a little more, I don't know, sterile when you're doing the rights advisement, even if you're not taking them into custody, which the only requirement for you to issue the Miranda rights is if they're in your custody and you're going to ask them questions. So I have conducted what we call some non-custodial interviews before, where I bring the person in, or I'm talking to them in their home or in their office, and I'm conducting an interrogation of that person who's the subject of the investigation, the target of the investigation. And while I don't advise them of their rights, I do make it a practice to make them demonstrate an understanding that they are not in custody. It makes it that much easier later on when you're trying to get that information that you glean from that interrogation in as evidence into a court. So it's just whatever the method is that I've come up with, and I'm not going to show you here online. I do teach some classes on this. I have taught it to a number of people. I have a basic and advanced interviewing and interrogation course that's certified by the state of Mississippi, so I can teach that to state and local law enforcement to get their continuing education hours. And what I teach them is one of the things I observed in this interview where Todd Blanche, and like I said, I think he did a pretty good job doing the interview. I didn't see much interaction from the assistant special agent in charge, but then again, I'm only a few clips into it. But one of the things you want to refrain from doing when you're in these interviews and interrogations is introducing the answer to the question in the question that you're asking, or providing only two options in the question that you're asking, because then you give the person something to choose from and they don't get to give you an answer. For example, if I said, John Smith, our investigation said that you were involved in this type of activity. So were you at 123 Anywhere Street, or were you at 456 State Street? Which place were you at? Well, I've only given them two answers. Well, what if he's been somewhere else? Or if I'm introducing the answer to the question, which is, if I said, so your intent in going to this party was not to smoke dope. You didn't plan on smoking dope going to the party. Is that right? I'm introducing an answer to it. A better way of asking that question is, did you go to a party? Did you do it? Or heck, did you do anything this night? I went to a party. Okay. Whose party was it? You're asking the who, what, where, and why, and how, but you're not introducing an answer into the question. And it takes practice to be able to do that on the fly and get into a flow in the interview. We always plan out these interviews, and you kind of come up with an investigative plan of how you're going to conduct the questioning. And you're going to have times that it's going to veer off of that plan. And you got to recognize when it veers off and how you either bring it back on to the plan, or you branch off from that plan and you follow the course of the interview in the new line of questioning. If they introduce something into the interview that you didn't know anything about, and there's a way of asking questions about it without indicating that you didn't know anything about it. There's also a way of asking those questions when they tell you something that confirms what another witness has told you, like where they were at or who they were with, or what they were doing. I mean, there's just different techniques to it. And unless you're doing that, pretty regularly, it's hard to come in and try to do something like that. And I saw a little bit of that in these Ghislaine Maxwell interviews. If the goal was to come in there and elicit new information out of her, to extract information, then they didn't do the job. Not that I've seen thus far. They may have been able to confirm some stuff that they already knew, but I would be looking to elicit new information of things that we didn't already know. Now, the other thing that came up from the Ghislaine Maxwell interview, and I've seen people talk about this online, is the fact, or they state, I don't know if it's a fact, but they state that Ghislaine Maxwell nor Jeffrey Epstein were interviewed by the FBI or investigators. And people were pointing to that as something where the FBI may have dropped the ball or missed something. I got to tell you, and any defense attorney will tell you this, that's not unusual, that the investigator would not have talked to them. because my brother-in-law was a defense attorney for a number of years. And as he will tell you, he tells his clients right off the bat, don't talk to the police, don't talk to the cops. We'll find out what we need to know through discovery and whatever they want to talk about in the courtroom. But we're not going to give them an opportunity to get that information from us. Now, that's a double-edged sword. What I posit is that there may be an opportunity for that person to correct the record, to legitimately correct the record, to say, nope, that's incorrect, and here's how I know why. And now we've got an opportunity to go out and disprove those allegations. How do I know that this can happen? Is because I worked a case when I was an OSI agent that was this way. I had a young lady that came in. She made a complaint against another airman that he'd raped her. We took her over to the base hospital. We got the rape kit on her, collected our evidence. We took that in to get it analyzed. And of course, we went and picked him up and brought him in, and we Mirandized him. And when we talked to him, he's like, no, this didn't happen. Well, when we followed up on the investigation, we found more things that lended credibility to what he was telling us, and we couldn't find anything that gave credibility to what she was telling us. And eventually we got to the point where it was determined that this guy's more likely telling us the truth, that it didn't happen this way, and the girl's not telling the truth. We just need to find out why. So we got authorization. We had to do that through our military chain of command to bring her in for a confrontational interview. So we brought her in, and it was I and a female OSI agent. We brought her in and interviewed her. And it took about an hour and a half, and she broke and admitted that it was all false, that she had actually initiated the intercourse with him, that she is the one that took advantage of him because he was heavily intoxicated and on the verge of passing out, that he didn't have the ability to do the things that she said that he did. And we had witnesses that corroborated all of that. So anyway, she got some non-judicial punishment, and he was looking at going to Leavenworth if we hadn't have gotten that information. We hadn't followed up on it. He did still get some punishment for drinking underage on the base. I thought that was a little egregious, but I don't get to weigh in on what the consequences are. We just collect the evidence. So on this Ghislaine Maxwell interview, I think if it was me, and I made this recommendation when I heard that Comey was going to be interviewed, with his seashell collection. And I said the same thing when I was in the FBI, when Hillary Clinton was interviewed by committee, where they had some DOJ attorneys and some FBI executives and then her counsel all sitting around a table asking questions, and they get to object to the questions and all of that. To me, that was taking a deposition, not conducting an interview or an interrogation. And I said the same thing about Comey, and I would say the same thing about Ghislaine if you're wanting to do an actual interrogation. And I said the same thing I said it inside the FBI to coworkers and my supervisor, that I thought they missed an opportunity to conduct an actual interview and interrogation of her. It should have been a seasoned agent, probably a street agent, somebody that has been doing this a long time, that's been very successful at doing it, it's very good at it, and have them go in and conduct the interview and interrogation. No disrespect to the attorneys that are out there, the district attorneys, prosecutors, the people from DOJ. You're not investigators. Maybe if you were a cop once before, you may have done this a couple of times, but you're not seasoned and experienced in conducting those interviews and interrogations. And if you really want to have something, and that may be the only time you get to talk to that person, you really should have a trained interviewer and interrogator. Now, somebody may counter with the fact that the Deputy Attorney General was actually in there with an FBI agent. Well, that agent was an assistant special agent in charge in the New York field office. So to get to a GS-15 level as an assistant special agent in charge, you've done some time as a field agent, then you typically have gone to FBI headquarters as a supervisor. You're not working cases anymore. Then the next step is typically out to the field to be a desk supervisor. And then you go out and you're running your squad. You're not conducting investigations, you're managing them. And you go around and do your inspections of stuff, and you get your criteria and to put your package in to become an assistant special agent in charge. And then you get the opportunity to be a special agent in charge, assistant special agent in charge. So just by the mere fact that this person is a GS-15 assistant special agent in charge, he's likely not worked a case, I would say, at a bare minimum 4 years, more than likely 5 to 7 years that he's been out of the field and has not worked cases, has not conducted interviews, has not conducted interrogations. So it is a perishable skill, and unless you practice it, and you can do that from going to some courses and doing some scenarios and stuff. Most of the courses that I went to, we did role-playing scenarios, everything from I got my diploma up there from the John Reed and Associates advanced course that I took back in 1996 to, advanced counterintelligence interviewing and interrogation courses that I took, a course that I took in the FBI. It is a skill, and it's just a different skill set than being an attorney. And like I said, no disrespect to them. I wouldn't have the experience to go in and ask direct questions, redirect, cross, recross, all of that stuff. That's more of a scripted type thing, where this is a technique. So my recommendation would have been, what's your goal here? Are you looking to elicit and extract new information, or are you just looking to go over the evidence we would have presented in court and see what she's going to comment about it? And if she provides some new information, that's kind of what they did, or at least that's what I'm seeing so far. They changed my mind after I listened to some more of the interviews. The other is that's happened this time is the Bolton search. So I'm not one of those that immediately goes out and weighs in on it. And I see a lot of people run to the microphone, especially these large follower podcasters. And, oh, yeah, here it comes. They're coming after Bolton. Finally, some accountability of people that were, the anti-Trumpers. Or there's people on the left that say, I can't believe that the president is targeting his enemies. And he's doing the same thing that he accused Obama and Biden of doing, of weaponizing DOJ to go after individuals. I kind of keep my powder dry on this until I hear the facts that are coming out. Now, it's been reported in the news that the reason that they were searching his house was that he had classified information, and that he shared that classified information over unapproved means. Now, that can get you into a lot of trouble, because there's a difference between what President Trump did, taking documents down to Mar-a-Lago, which, as the president, he is the ultimate classifier and declassifier. Merely speaking, he can declassify something. He doesn't have to change the marking on it. It doesn't have to go through any process or anything like that. To get something declassified from below his level, it goes through a process. It can go all the way up to him, or go to a designated declassifier. But he doesn't have to do that. He can merely look at a trailer load of boxes and say, everything in there is declassified. And it is. It's not something that you can counter. So the search down at Mar-a-Lago, I've seen some reports, and we talked about this on the radio, was that it was an illegal search. And I've heard some other uninformed, inexperienced people out there talking about this search. It was a dispute between the archivist, the national archivist, and the president over who is entitled to have those documents. And there were people at the Department of Justice that were adamant that the president shouldn't have those documents. They should be with the government. And I don't think there was any criminal penalties to taking that stuff that the National Archivist said should belong to them. There weren't any penalties when the Clintons left the White House and took some things with them that they had to return. So there's no difference here other than it was the documents. And the president is allowed to take those with him. Now, that's different than what we saw with Joe Biden. So Joe Biden was a vice president. He doesn't have declassification authority. He doesn't have the ability to take anything home. So the fact that he had classified documents at his residence, and those boxes in the garage next to his car, his Corvette that he had there, that is a violation of law, and it should be prosecuted, and he's not exempt from it. It's just whether or not people will do it. The president of the United States, this would go to Barack Obama, this would go to George W. Bush, this would go to Bill Clinton. When they leave, they can take those documents with them. They can just say they're declassified and they're theirs. If the archivist wants those documents, they can get a copy of them, or the president can make a copy of them, give them the originals. It really doesn't matter, but it's not some violation. Bolton is a different story. So it looks like Bolton probably took some things with him or was given some things that he wasn't entitled to have that were either classified or they were designated as compartmentalized. You can have something that's SCI, sensitive compartmentalized information, that's not classified. It is compartmentalized. It's information that's closed hold, that's kept into a need to know. And it seems like that's what the search was, to find out if he had anything in his home that he wasn't supposed to have. And apparently they must have found some things that they took out of there. It'll be very telling, what happens from him from this point, if they take that information to the grand jury and they get him charged and bring him in. I don't know what happens from there. I do know that it is a violation of law to have that. It is a violation of law to even things that are unclassified but sensitive. You can't, if you're not entitled to have access to those things, you're not entitled to have access to those things. In the FBI, there are a lot of us like me that I had high clearances. I had a lot of letters after my clearance. I don't even know if I still have a clearance right now. Usually those things run out after about 5 years. I don't know if they've extended it with some of the contracts that I have now. It's a little different format. It's kind of a continuing evaluation of the clearance rather than the every 5 years doing something. I think inside the FBI, still about every 5 years, they want to, if you're on the counterintelligence national security side, they still want to do the polygraph. But as far as exceeding your access, that's something you can't do. So inside the FBI, let's say I'm able to log into the FBI system. I'm able to go into the electronic case file system or Sentinel or whatever it's called now and do a search for documents. Now, as part of my course of business, if I'm doing a search for John Smith and I come across some documents that have nothing to do with my case, there's at least a plausible answer for how I got there. But when I go in and I specifically start searching for something, and everything that you do on that computer, you leave a record for it. Well, now if I'm searching for things that I'm not entitled to have access to, doesn't matter whether I'm capable or able to do it. I'm supposed to know, based on my clearance, that there's things that I shouldn't be poking around in. Uh, it's like saying that you can go inside the FBI offices. Okay, I can use my SAX badge and get inside the door. That doesn't mean that I get to go into everybody's offices and open up everybody's drawers and rummage around through drawers. I'm exceeding my access. The same thing with the computer. So I can't go into the computer and print or write down or something that I see on the screen and take that out. I can't even read it and take it out inside my head and provide that information to somebody else, because then I've exceeded my access and I've given that information to somebody else that's not authorized to have it. So it sounds like that's what may have happened with Bolton, that he probably had some information he wasn't supposed to have, or the information that he had, he could easily memorize something from when he was still inside the government, had his security clearance, and written it down. Well, that information is still classified, even if he writes it down on a second piece of paper. So if they find that in there and it ties to documents that he would have had access in his position as the national security advisor during the first Trump administration, he's probably going to have some problems. I have actually put people in prison. One of the violations is 18 USC 1030. You can take a look at that. And that statute talks about, exceeding your access, getting access, accessing information that you're not supposed to have. It's codified into the law for a reason. So I'll be interested to see how this plays out with Bolton. Everybody's innocent until proven guilty, and we've got to assume that he didn't do anything wrong. I'm just basing on what I'm hearing out there in the media, so no disparagement to him. And if he didn't do anything wrong, I think he should be able to be made whole after that. He should be able to go after the FBI or DOJ if they unjustly came and searched, just like if they unjustly searched people like Roger Stone, Carter Page. I do 100% believe that Carter Page had his Fourth Amendment rights violated when Kevin Kleinsmith, who pled guilty to what he did, falsified information that went into a FISA warrant that authorized the FBI and DOJ to read his communications and search things that were connected to him. He definitely had his Fourth Amendment rights violated, and I don't think that he got made whole, not by a long shot. Kevin Kleinsmith got a slap on the wrist compared to what I would have gotten as an FBI agent doing the same thing. But, we'll see how that plays out. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about was the radio hit that I did on Thursday. And we talked a little bit about Chris Piota, and he and I went through, it's on my X feed and it's on YouTube. So if you want to go back and listen to it, we talked about things going on in the FBI, the way that people are trying to put some heads on pikes of people that necessarily didn't have the control over the things like you thought they would. We talked a little bit about the firings. There were 4 individuals that were terminated I think it was last week or the week before last from the FBI. 2 of them are names that I know. One of them is a person I know personally because I worked with him the last 2 years in the FBI, and I think he was unfairly fired. And from people that and that's Stephen Jensen. The people that I know Brian Driscoll, these people that I know that I trust that would have my 6, they speak highly of Driscoll. I haven't found anybody that speaks disparagingly of Driscoll. I mean, just a good stand-up guy. The claim has been made that he pushed back and wouldn't release the names of agents in the field, and I think that was the right decision because there would be a feeding frenzy on the internet. It's sort of like the people that were screaming for the Epstein client list, that the names should be out there. Well, that's just going to usurp their due process rights because you're going to accuse them of malfeasance and then they got to prove their innocence. That would be the same thing of releasing these names to these FBI agents. So, if you just want to know, there's a way for the people behind the scenes to figure out who is who, but releasing the names, unredacted names out there. And I think you're finding out that now. Bill Shipley, Shipwreck Crew on here, pointed out, rightly so, a lot of the things going on with the Epstein file, why it won't be released, that the judge is going to say, no, we can't do this because it violates some people's rights. I think you're going to see the same thing with this thing with Driscoll. He did the right thing. There was already a way to work around it to do that. So I don't know yet what the impetus was behind of terminating these individuals. Stephen Jensen was no J6 warlord. I've talked online, I've talked at length about that. He's just a good man. And he did not have the control and direction of things that people are alleging as a section chief at FBI headquarters. Anybody that's been in the FBI knows that a section chief can't tell anybody in the field what to do. It just doesn't work that way. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with them. I hope that they are made whole, that they're brought back into the FBI, because I think that's all Stephen wants. I haven't spoken to him since he's been suspended, but it is very telling that they told him he was suspended on Wednesday and he'd have to leave till Friday. And that's an indication that, just adding numbers up, it seems like that wasn't a decision from Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, that decision was made likely from the White House and probably with limited information, somebody acting on emotion rather than the facts. So I'm confident that that's going to get straightened out. The other part we talked about was I had Daniel Edward Rosen. He's with the New York Sun. I think we connected on LinkedIn. He may have reached out looking for some information or some background on something. He may have read my CV or had seen me out there talking about some things. And we have some mutual friends. So it's interesting when and this has happened a couple of times. I'm usually at the gym. You see that I'm in a gym shirt right now. I'm usually going to the gym or coming from the gym. It's one of the benefits of retirement. It's also a reason I'm trying to get in the best shape as I can because I want to be around here for a long period of time. Got my granddaughter coming in to this world next month, and we're looking forward to that. And I want to be around for her to remember. So with Daniel, he had texted me when the Jensen thing was going on, And it's weird because I'd get a text from him, and then I would check with somebody about, are you hearing anything on this? And they would say, yeah, I just heard from Daniel. Is he asking you the same thing? That's happened a couple of times. So we have a lot of mutual friends, and the friends that we have, mutual ones I trust. So I think he's just a generally good guy. I don't say that lightly. There's not a lot of reporters or investigative reporters, and I always use that in quotation marks, investigative reporters out there that I trust. He seems to want to get it right rather than being first. So he will follow up on some things. He's a good guy. Check him out on X, Daniel Edward Rosen, or go to the New York Sun and pull up his articles. Very good writer. And I've been sourced in a couple of his articles by name. I let my stuff go out there by name. I don't do anything behind the scenes. And some of my close friends have been referenced in there as well. So the last thing that I want to leave you with, we've got election season coming up. And you're going to see a lot of your representatives going out there and cloaking themselves in the successes of Donald Trump. And I advocate that you should exercise your First Amendment right to petition and seek redress of grievances. In other words, that is your right to ask your representatives, what are you doing or what are you not doing to represent me? Because I don't want to hear anybody say, it frustrates me when I hear some elected representatives say, well, I told people what I'm about and they elected me to do what I said I'm about. No, you're elected to represent. You're not elected to go up there and act on your own behalf. So when you don't act on the behalf of the citizens, they have a right to ask you about it. Or when you don't take action, they have a right to ask you about it. So when you see a lot of these people going out and trying to say that they're standing shoulder to shoulder with Trump on the border, shoulder to shoulder on the things going on in DC, shoulder to shoulder on, the military, shoulder to shoulder on civil rights, all of these things like that. The question I would ask is, what did you do or not do the 4 years that Trump wasn't in office? Because in the Article 1 branch, that's where the representatives are. It's the most powerful branch in government. There are not three co-equal branches. And we will have a podcast on this coming up in the future, I promise you, where I will give chapter and verse citing my justification for saying that there are not three co-equal branches. And I will delineate the powers of each one of them, which are the most powerful. What the most powerful is Article 1. The weakest is Article 3, and that's the Supreme Court. And I'll talk about why. And I'll challenge anybody. I will challenge a reporter, somebody that thinks that they're, a professor that teaches Constitution at college. I've had a number of them that I've debated. An attorney that says, well, I'm an attorney, so I'm an expert on the Constitution. Far from it. I just talked to somebody that took the bar, and there was a very limited amount of constitutional questions on there, which I find surprising, since the Constitution is the foundation for all of our laws. If you can't easily articulate every bit of the Constitution, then I don't know how you come to a conclusion on what's happening in the law. You can't just rely on stare decisis on Supreme Court decisions. They get stuff wrong all the time. They were wrong in Roe versus Wade. If you think that they don't get things wrong, I tell you to go back and read the Dred Scott decision, read Plessy versus Ferguson. You're going to find that there's been a lot of wrong from the Supreme Court. And the Congress has the ability to overcome that. And the Congress represents you, so you have that ability. So I want you to watch this video, and I'm going to tell you why it's important. This is a video of a mother with her child before the Fairfax County School Board. Now, I used to live in Fairfax County in Centerville, Virginia, and it has gotten terrible up there since I left. I remember when Loudoun County was just building out right before I left back in the early 2000s. But Mr. Producer, play this video, and then I'll comment on that, and then we're going to call it for the night.
Hi, I'm Kaylee Weichbrot. I'm a mom of two in Fairfax County. This is my oldest. And my husband and I have a difficult decision to make this fall, as he is approaching preschool age, and we are faced with the decision of whether or not we are going to put our child in public school system where Fairfax County has decided to move forward with instituting gender studies in elementary school. despite having done a study group, a focus group in the community to see if parents even wanted this. And when parents said no, the board voted 16-0 and said we're moving forward anyways. This shows clearly that they see parents not as partners, but as an obstacle for their agenda. And I have a really hard time looking at him and going, here, I'm just going to give you over to people who do not want to partner with me in how you're going to be raised. School and education is a huge part of a child's life. And early childhood is supposed to be filled with exploration and creativity and fun, not debating issues that are for adults to handle. These kinds of topics should be introduced sensitively and by parents who are raising their children with their values, not with an ideology passed down from the top.
So that is how it's done. I have spoken a number of times before the Madison County School Board. We had some problems there started out with COVID, the COVID overreach. I hate when people tell me, oh, well, this was because of COVID or that was because of COVID. No, the problems that you face were based on your government exercising authority that they did not have and your refusal to counter that. I've told you the story about when our governor, and I like the guy, I like Tate Reeves. I think he's a good father. I've seen him a number of times. I've talked with him a number of times. His kids are involved in soccer. That's been a huge part of our world with our with our middle son and our youngest son. But there was overreach. They were exercising rights, constitutional authority that they did not have, and they were infringing upon your liberties. And all it took was somebody to stand up and say, I'm not doing this. I told you the story. That's exactly what I did. March of 2020, this COVID overreach began. I recognized it pretty early. And I said, but I'm reasonable, having been in the government for 33 and a half years. I'm going to give the government enough time to get its ill-prepared act in order, because they're actually ill-prepared. And I said, I'll give them until May 1st to tell me what the things are to be the threats. Tell me what the threat matrix is. Tell me what threats are out there, and the dangers. And then I'll decide how I and my family will comport themselves to this. The government's not going to tell me that I have to wear a mask. The government's not going to tell me that I can't freely associate with people. The government's not going to tell me that I can't engage in commerce. But if I engage in commerce, I can only do it certain ways. So I just said, I'm not doing this anymore. And I gave a heads up to our state and local law enforcement. And I even gave a heads up to the FBI. I'm not doing this. And I didn't do it. I'm still here. I didn't go to jail. I didn't get arrested. I didn't even get nothing. It just took somebody actually standing up. That's what this mom's doing. So I did the same thing with our Madison County School Board. We had some books in the library that some parents brought to my attention based on my background work in the FBI, and they wanted me to review them. And I did. And there were 22 books that they had given me. I perused through them. About 20 of them, I would say, were obscene and pornographic material that any adult handing that to a child could easily be charged on state and federal charges. Just unquestionable based on my experience. And I was kind of curious as to why they were in our school libraries. What was the purpose of having them there? So I went to a number of these school board meetings. Now, probably what happened with this lady, we only saw her. We didn't see how the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, the school board, Fairfax County School Board reacted to it. I can tell you, when I spoke, the first time that I spoke to the Madison County School Board down here, one of the representatives actually fell asleep during the meeting. That's how unconcerned he was with what was going on. And the others wouldn't answer any questions. They wouldn't comment. And it was frustrating. So the next few times that I spoke, I started figuring out a way to civilly challenge them on the issues. The first way that we did it was we threatened their security bonds. Every elected official has to have a security bond to be able to be in office that says there is a financial penalty to not upholding the Constitution. So we got a copy of their bond. We contacted the bonding company. We got a printout of that. And we wrote a letter of intent to file a claim against those surety bonds. And typically, when you file a claim, there's an investigation that ensues. And during that period, they can't get bonded anywhere else. And if that surety bond company decides that they violated their oath and that bond company has to pay out, they will drop them as a client and then they can't be in office. So it terrifies them when they do that. We did get them to change the COVID policy when we filed a claim against the surety bonds. On the school board, on the books in the library issue, we confronted them on that. And I will note that I spoke, and then a 17-year-old student spoke, and she was speaking up in support of the books and the diversity efforts that were going on in the school. And they were really attentive to her. But we got one guy that falls asleep when I and some other parents were talking. So the next time I spoke, I actually read from one of the books. And when I got to the end of that, I looked at them, and I knew a bunch of them. I go to church with some of them, and I've met with them on other issues when my kids were in school. And I said, I'm not going to ask you why you didn't take the books out of the library. I'm done asking that question. What I am going to ask you is why you thought it was important enough for the books to be in there in the first place, because they didn't just get there by accident. They were put there, and you're ultimately responsible for that. If the librarian picked them out and put them in there and you didn't have the oversight of them, that's on you. Same thing with your elected representatives. When you hear your representatives out there, and mine said this in an open forum on X, you can go back and look at it. Michael Guest said this on the USAID stuff when we found out all of that fraud that was going on with those funds. He accused Joe Biden of hiding that from him for the last 4 years. I'm sorry, Joe Biden's not hiding anything from you and shouldn't be able to hide anything from you, because if you were doing your job as our congressman, you would have taken the time to say, we just approved this money. Tell us how you spent it. Tell us where it went. And if they didn't give you the answers, then you halt the money. You have that ability. You have the power of the purse. And if you didn't do anything about that, what were you doing? Similar to making claims that you're helping President Trump on the border. It just doesn't make any sense. So until you can do the things where you can confront, and I encourage you to do it civilly. We're not to the point where we need to do it uncivilly, but civilly confront your elected representatives like this young lady did before that school board. She just talked to them as a mom, talked to them very plainly. Knowing people that I have friends that are still up in Fairfax County, I doubt very seriously it changed any of their minds or anything. It's just something that happens in that type of community where you have a lot of a transient population that doesn't pay attention to what's going on in the school system. And that opens up the doors for individuals that have their own agenda to step forward. I think we have a better foundation down here, especially in Madison, the city. Madison, the county, we have a problem. We've got some issues with our board of supervisors down here, and that'll be a topic for another show. I may have Chip Matthews, another guy that I know here is a radio show host. We may come in and talk about some of the Madison County issues, kind of give you guys an idea what goes on down here in our area. Maybe it'll help you out in your area. But we have it pretty good in Madison, the city. And I think one of those reasons is we don't have that transient population. Our mayor here is a dear friend of mine, Mary Hawkins Butler. She had a vision about 40 years ago when she became mayor of how to lay out this city. No apartments, no trailers, build a business or build a home. It's a community for family and business. And I see any place that opens up to apartments or trailer parks or things like that, and you get people that move in there, they're not invested in the community. They're there for a short period of time, and they typically don't pay attention. And that opens up the door for people that have their own agenda to do things like get on these boards. And I can tell you, having lived in Fairfax County, there's I think about 2.2 million people just in that county. It is packed. And a good chunk of those people are only there for a short period of time. They're passing through in government or the military, or they're people that just don't get involved in the things going on in the school systems. They just take advantage of the things that are put out there and paid for by others. And when you do that, you lay an opening for people that don't have your best interest at heart. to make some decisions that affect your life. Well, anyway, thanks for the wrap up. We will look at having a guest next week. We're going to try to do this again the next time I guest host on WYEB. We'll have that streamed on the radio. We're still looking at some point of having maybe a retired agents roundtable if people would be interested in that. Some of the people in my circle, some names that you would probably know, to either get on an X, a Spaces account, and we would have somebody else run that. I've offered that up to Stealth Medical on here, to Shell from Rob Manus's show, to possibly have something like that and manage it where people can just come in and ask us questions. We're pretty blunt with what we say. We're not going to tell you anything classified, but we can tell you about the mechanics based on our experience. I think you'd be far better served listening to people that have actually had a successful and long FBI career than listening to a couple of people that may have had a cup of coffee in the FBI, and you see them platformed out there where people tout them as some type of experts. I think a lot of people are kind of seeing through that now. You can only fake your way through it for a certain period of time before even people that are inexperienced in that area know that what you're saying is not actually true. I don't engage with these people online. It's a waste of time. I got more important things to do. I got a granddaughter coming. I got a business to run. I do contract work down here, and I'm just trying to enjoy retirement and stay fit. Quick comment on the last actual show that we did on a Saturday with that bench press thing that was going on in the gym. That was kind of thrown out for some friends of mine. It's interesting when you understand the technique and you've done this for a long period of time. I've been working out since I was probably about 13 or 14 years old. And I've probably learned a lot about the wrong ways of working out as opposed to the right ways. But I'm reasonably strong for somebody my age. I can handle myself pretty well. We'll talk about that another time. We'll have a fitness thing. My friend Mark Mitchell, he's on his Pollster with Rasmussen Reports. One of his most listened to podcasts, he was just talking about his diet and things like that. And I was really interested in it too. And he and I may get on here and riff a little bit about exercise routines and stuff. But anyway, thanks for tuning in. Keep following the page. Go to YouTube, subscribe to the channel so you can get alerts. I will pin this to my profile so you can go back and listen to it. Follow some of the people that I mentioned. Daniel Edward Rosen from the New York Sun, Chris Piota. You can find him out there. He's got a great book, Wanted the FBI I Once Knew. And don't forget, if you go to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, especially if you're popping into town to see an Alabama football game, when it's over with, take yourself over to Two Dimes, just within a walk of Bryant-Denny Stadium. Or go to Two Dimes, look for Two Dimes Tuscaloosa on the internet, and look at some of the acts that are coming up there. They got some pretty big deals of mostly country music stars, but they got some other events there with MMA and just a fun time. It is a great venue. I can't say enough good things about it. If I get a chance, I'll process some of the video that I took when we were there that night. I can't play the music because we will get booted off of YouTube, but I can at least let you see what was going on. But thanks again for tuning in to the Blunt Force Conservative Podcast. We will see you next time. We'll try to get this thing scheduled more often instead of just popping up here and there. But thanks. Enjoy your Saturday. Have a blessed weekend.